Pacific Northwest.
The Dori Monson Show on KIRO Radio. This is The Big Lead.
Coming to you from the Carter Subaru studio and streaming on Facebook Live. Welcome! Welcome to The Big Show. Lots of news to talk about. Let's get right to The Big Lead.
The Big Lead. Top story.
So what's the latest, Ursula, that we know about this measles outbreak now?
Well, the latest is that the state is now telling people, especially in Southwest Washington, who have sick kids, to keep their kids at home. Don't even take them to the hospital now because the measles it's so contagious that if you go into a room where someone's been like 2 hours ago and someone was infected, you'll likely get it if you're not vaccinated.
So I was trying to think if I've ever had the measles. I don't remember. I had chicken pox, I remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember if I ever got the measles when I was a kid.
Well, and even if you have, I mean, there's still a likelihood if you've had it or if you have been vaccinated, the likelihood of you getting it is lower, but you could still get it, but it just wouldn't be as severe.
See, this is a very complex issue because there are a lot of parents who believe there's kind of this, subculture that believe that the vaccinations cause autism. That's kind of the like I said, it's a tiny percentage of people, but they refuse to get their kids vaccinated for that reason.
And if not that reason, there are other reasons that they will say. I mean, whether it's religious, whether it's whatever. But, I mean, there were studies that have been debunked. I mean, there are more and more studies that have said that is not the case.
Right. But that still runs rampant.
Yes.
And there are a lot of celebrities who have come out and said that.
I mean, Jenny McCarthy did a lot of damage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. She was one of the
there was a big
big
spike after exactly.
And
then, right now, I was just going to tell you, though, there are 35 confirmed cases as of right now.
And the measles was largely eradicated in the United States up until several years ago. So that's what makes this even more alarming. Now, there is one issue here that nobody is talking about. You may recall a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about how Yakima has a record number of homicides in the city and in the county. And the sheriff there said, if we could find some common thread that would help explain this, then maybe we could work towards solving the problem. So I had the sheriff on the show, and I said, how many of the perps and victims are illegals? Oh, we don't know. And I said, well, you say you want to look for a common thread, and it's widely believed, and people in Yakima tell me that they know it for a fact, that the number of murders there is because of gang and drug activity, particularly with illegals. And so it's frustrating to me when I hear about, we need to find a common thread for all of this. And then they won't even seek out data that could provide a common thread. Ursula just a story in her newscast about yet another problem down in Burien. Burien, there were enough signatures on a ballot to make Burien give the voters a chance to say no to Burien being a sanctuary city. People wanted to at least have a vote on that. And they went to court and they said, no, we have to be a sanctuary city. We're not going to give the voters a say. And what we have seen is Burien has just gone to seed. It's, crime is rampant. Innocent people are getting murdered sitting at their desk because of a stray bullet. 2 teenage girls were murdered there more than a year ago. That crime remains unsolved. And then when I talked to the mayor of Burien, which I did a few months ago, and I said, how much of this is because of illegals? We don't know. We don't ask that question. How can you solve problems if you refuse to even, because of political correctness, if you refuse to even seek out data? And that brings me to this measles outbreak. Let me refer you to a July 2016 New York Times story. Not exactly an anti-undocumented news organization. New York Times talked about the largest measles outbreak in the country in years was down in Arizona at an immigration detention center. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of people who come into this country illegally are not vaccinated for measles. And there are, large swaths of the illegal community that, they, for whatever reason, whether it be religious or fear, unfounded fears of autism or whatever, they don't want their kids vaccinated. And so what we're seeing is this latest measles outbreak, they say that they can maybe trace it to a church down in Vancouver, Washington, that has a large Russian immigrant population. The school's principal is Andrei Dolbinin, who talked about the boy who might be patient zero in all of this.
That boy is not started yet, so he just recovered at home. And we asked the parents just take blood exam if the disease is gone, so we just welcome to come back. Yeah.
Now, I will say, I don't know, nobody knows the immigration status of this boy and his parents because, again, Washington is a declared sanctuary state. And so they're not even allowed to ask the question. And this is where reasons of political correctness can lead to, disaster. We have to have data. We have to know the source of the murders in Yakima and the rampant crime in Burien and the measles outbreak in our state. And the New York Times reported that the largest outbreak in years in Arizona was at a detention center for illegals trying to get into this country. And this vacuum of knowledge, of information, of data, because we have to be so politically correct that we cannot even ask the question. And this is the game that's being played by Jay Inslee and Dow Constein and Jenny Durkin and Jimmy Mata down in Burien and all of these people who embrace sanctuary policies. Then they try telling us that, undocumented people, their crime rate's lower. How do you know that? You don't even ask the question. You can't track it. You're not allowed to track it. So you just make up data because the facts may not support the social correctness of your position. And when they refuse to even ask questions, when we have evidence of, huge outbreak in Arizona at an illegal immigrant detention center, when you have a, immigrant church in Vancouver being ground zero for all of this, I would like to know if the number of unvaccinated illegals coming into this country plays a role in what has been one of the largest outbreaks that we've seen in years in the U.S., and it's right here in Washington State. And, we have one of the highest populations of illegals in the United States here in Washington. So do we know for certain? Nope, because they're not allowed to ask the question. And this is where we have politicians who would rather stick their head in the sand and act like their policies are bulletproof instead of trying to collect information that would tell us one way or the other. So there's another example of where leftist, political correct politics trumps public safety. Let's at least get the data. Let's at least ask the question. Let's see if there's some connection. I'd like to know, wouldn't you? Up next in the Big Lead.
The Big Lead. Your tax dollars at work.
Well, as we predicted yesterday on the Big Show, the Seattle City Council voted on the wealth transfer tax down by the Seattle waterfront. They call it a local improvement district, or LID. And this is where they are just assessing, this isn't an income tax. This is the value of your property, whether it be a condo or a commercial building. Now, if you're a commercial building owner, you can factor that into your expenses and you can pass it along to your renters. If you are, and I know a couple in their 60s, they bought their condo about 25, 30 years ago down near Harbor Steps. It was not an extravagant purchase. It was not a, upscale neighborhood like it is now. And there are a lot of people in their, 50s, 60s, 70s who live down there. And now Jenny Durkin and the Seattle City Council have said, you got to write us a check for thousands of dollars so you can pay for the waterfront improvement. And the fact that Rob Johnson, the proven liar on the city, the proven liar, one of many proven liars on the city council. And I've told you what's going on with Rob Johnson. He's already announced he's not running for re-election, and he's gotten a job with the new NHL team that's coming to Seattle to work on transportation and traffic to and from the Seattle Center. That's their stated reason for hiring Rob Johnson. But I have sources who have told me what's really going on. They jury-rigged the boundaries for this local improvement district on the waterfront. They left out a couple of blocks of commercial buildings up near the north end, up near Denny. Why would they just take that out of the mix? Because they need those properties when they do their next lid, a local improvement district, which is going to hit people on South Queen Anne. And they're going to ask for a check for thousands and thousands of dollars that you're just going to have to write to the city council. And Rob Johnson is not hired by the NHL team to just do transportation. Seattle City Councilman Rob Johnson has been hired to try to push through the next lid, the next tax. And they're going to roll this throughout the region now, throughout the city for sure. They want to do Ballard. Let's beautify Market Street because we have too many bums here now. Okay, we'll tax everybody in Ballard. We'll have them write us a check for thousands and thousands of dollars. And they're going to roll this throughout the city. And if you don't live in the city, you better be very wary of this because anytime government sees an idea where they can get thousands of your dollars, they're going to pursue it. And by the way, City of Seattle, Jenny Durkin, they lied to those condo owners down by the waterfront about how much it was going to cost them. She tossed out a bogus figure, and now people are starting to run the numbers and find out that it's dramatically more than what Jenny Durkin told them. And so Rob Johnson, who's still on the Seattle City Council, who is going to work to extend this tax to Queen Anne so they can beautify the area around the Seattle Center Coliseum when we get a hockey team. They're going to make taxpayers pay for that. And here's what Rob Johnson said about the waterfront lid.
This won't just be a regional asset. It'll be a national and international asset as we finally turn over our waterfront back to the people as opposed to a place that is very loud and for cars.
It's just ridiculous. So yes, you spend billions of dollars putting a tunnel in, getting rid of the viaduct. You say you're going to return it to the people? How fast do you think the drug vagrants are going to be setting up tents down on the waterfront? How much do you think they are going to immediately destroy the hundreds of millions of dollars that's spent and invested there because Seattle continues to attract the drug addicts from around the nation to our region? On and on it goes. Just a continued ripoff of the people. By the way, speaking of your tax dollars at work, if you've seen your property taxes go up by thousands of dollars the last couple of years for the schools, ballots are probably in your hand right now. And in Seattle, they have 2 new public school levies on the ballot. a capital levy for $1.4 billion. And so if your house is worth $1 million, then you're going to have to pay about over $850 a year. $850 on top of the thousands in increased property taxes that you're paying. And then they're going to have an educational programs and operations levy. And that one is going to soak homeowners for a few $100 a year. So you'd have to pay over $1,000 a year in school levy taxes on top of all the property taxes. But here's the game that's being played. They say that it's about capital improvements in one levy. They say it's about educational programs in the other levy. Bull! It's about paying these unbelievably outrageous raises that they just gave the teachers. They do not have the money to pay for these raises for beyond the next year or two. And so they're doing a shell game. They talk about capital improvements. They talk about educational programs. No. You'd have plenty of money for all that stuff if the teachers and their union hadn't soaked the taxpayers with these outrageous raises that they've gotten. And we're seeing that happening right now down in Los Angeles. They had a teacher strike in L.A. that just got settled last week. They just announced today that this settlement with the teachers union in L.A. is going to blow a $547 million hole in their budget. So we'll just give them whatever they want, and then we'll worry about how we're going to come up with tax money to pay for it down the road. That's how we do everything around here. That's how they're doing it in L.A. We just have to keep coming up with money in the future, but we'll push that to next year's politicians. We'll push that to the next generation of homeowners. We'll push that to our children. They'll have to figure all that out. I told you last week, Washington State has $82 billion in debt because of what we owe for unfunded public employee pensions and school bonds. The sixth highest of any state in the country. I had the state treasurer on the show. A lot of people think we have a balanced budget in this state. No. We just give people what they demand, and we say, we'll figure out how to pay for it 5 or 10 years from now. And we're buried in debt now. We're buried in debt. About $15,000 for every man, woman, and child in debt in our state because we just keep caving in to public employee demands. And the beat goes on. That is your big lead for today.
The Big Lead on KIRO Radio.
Whew, we're just getting rolling here. Howard Schultz, who has made billions of dollars selling coffee to woke liberals, he's now finding that the woke liberals are turning on him. Plays some audio. We'll talk about it next on the Dori Monson Show.